Thank you very much, Richard. Let me see if this, oh yeah, it does. Can you hear me? Move it up a little bit. You can hear me now, right? That's good. Well, thank you very much for having me and taking the day or afternoon to come and listen to me, hopefully make a compelling case why you should hire me as your president. Let me begin a little bit by talking about my background. I am originally from South Africa, so if you are detecting a little bit of an accent here, it's because I'm from South Africa. I've been here, though, for a long time. I've been to the US for almost 40 years now, but my accent will not leave me alone, if I may say so. Let me start by talking about why the community college. Let me start with the big story and see if I can, and see if I can narrow it down to why I'm here today, standing in front of you. I grew up in a segregated society. Those of you who may have studied African history or world affairs, you will know that South Africa was a segregated country until 1999. I left South Africa for political reasons when I was fairly young, at 15 in 1977. At the time, we had riots where the government at the time had tried to impose Afrikaans, which is a language that was spoken by the white community that ruled South Africa. So I fled the country with the rest of a number of people in my age, and I went to Botswana, a neighboring country. I'm going to speed forward to here. I was a refugee in Botswana, and I got a scholarship to go to Kenya. And the United Nations had a plan to bring South African blacks to the United States to give them educational opportunities. So I applied. You had to apply to 3 institutions. I applied to Columbia University, Williams College in Massachusetts, a tiny little college in Williamstown, and Spokane, Washington, which is a tiny little town, not as small as Williams College. So I came to Williams College. It was so cold, I couldn't bear it. So they said, well, you know, you had 3 institutions that accepted you. You can choose another one. So I chose Spokane, Washington. So I graduated from Spokane, Washington with a degree in English, and I got a wife in the process. You can't do better than that. And I stayed in Spokane, Washington, and I pursued my master's degree and my PhD. I had just finished my doctoral program, and a faculty member who had been my mentor said, you know, there is this man who is going to be coming to talk about this educational system called community colleges. I think because you don't like research, you may want to go and listen to him. He's an alumni. He graduated from our program, and he's a president for Spokane Community Colleges. Go listen to him talk about this entity. And I went and sat down and listened to this man talk about this storage institution called the community college system. He said, and it stayed in my memory, in my heart's memory, he said, community colleges are their own ramp to the American promise and middle-class life. And they are the Ellis Island of the 21st century for our immigrant families. No singular higher education institution plays that role in people's lives. I was sold. I never looked back. All right. Right now, I am currently the Executive Vice President for Student Services at Victor Valley College, which is Southern California. I've been there for 6 years now, pushing my 7th year. Prior to that, I was the campus president for Northern Virginia Community College, Alexandria campus in Virginia. I can never leave this opportunity out because I think people have the right to know. I'm also very proud to say, if you have heard that Jill Biden was the community college faculty. I was Jill Biden's boss. I hired Jill Biden to teach our developmental education English classes. And in 2013, no, I just do what my wife tells me. If you want to know how to train your husband, talk to me. So in 2013, my wife said, I have a serious matter though. My cousin, whom I'm very close to, is not well in Riverside, California. I would like to move there closer to my uncle. So that's how I ended up there. So prior to that, I had been Executive Vice President for Instruction, the same position I have now at Bellevue Community College in Seattle, a very big college with about 40,000 students and duplicated head count. I have accomplished a number of proudful things that I would like to share with you if I had time in all these institutions and in all these positions. But in the main, I am here today because I believe that I share the values. I like the fact that out of your 8 values, your first value as an institution is student first. I subscribe to that creed. I believe in that. I will share with you in due time, I hope, some of the efforts that I have been part of in these positions I have held in these various institutions that would showcase to you that not only have I been committed to the mission of the community college system, but I've contributed some of the most game-changing, innovative efforts that are nationwide when the time comes.
Thank you. How do you connect with students in your role as a senior administrator, and how can students connect and communicate with you?
Well, I'll begin by just talking about, I just referenced to you that one of the wonderful things that have attracted me to this position is your dedication and having students at the center of everything you do. One of the things that I have done in terms of making sure that I'm accessible to the students, that I'm visible to the students, but also to show faculty, staff, and all college communities that students are the most important reason why we are here. These are the things I have done, and I hope if you hire me to continue doing those things. One of the things that I like that I do very much is during our first week of school, we have what is called a Welcome to College week. That's the first week where we put on our t-shirts with our little signs that say, welcome, at least where I am now, welcome to Victor Valley College, ask me any question. And I'm very proud to say I have done that when I was the president of the campus back in DC, and I continue to do that. I am out welcoming students during the first week with our student services and our volunteer faculty. And I think that's one of the most symbolic things that I'm really proud of that I've done, that demonstrates to students that not only do I care about them, but I'm happy to see them come to our institution. Some of the things that I have done that if you hired me, I would continue to do is we have what we call Listening Week, where we meet with all the students and we have the students tell us the pain points they are experiencing at the college, from onboarding when they come into our institutions to the problems they may be facing in their classroom. I'm known for walking around campus with a bunch of cards that I carry with myself, and every student I see, I say, hello, what's your name? How is the college treating you? How can I help make this a positive experience? And I give every student I meet my card to call me if at any time they have a question or they want to talk to me. Those are just some of the things that I do that personally that I think I would love to be able to do here if I came here. We also have what we call communication forums. Communication forums are every 2 months. We gather students like this and they share with us all the issues that are going on in their lives. We also have what we call a consultation forum. On the fourth Monday of the month, all the executive team from 8:30 until 5 o'clock, we meet with the academic senate so they can share with us what's going on in their respective areas. We meet with the student body so they can share what's going on with the student body. We meet with the classified staff. We meet with all constituents to hear the issues that may be going on in their respective lives. But students are part of a process, at least have been part of the process in my previous administrative lives, where they are at the center and they're in front of everything we do.
Thank you. What is your philosophy of budget management? What percent of the general funds should be held in reserve?
Well, let me begin with the last part. You know, I would be disingenuous if I told you what precise percentage of the general fund at Hartnell College should be held, because I don't know your fiscal situation. I don't know your enrollment picture. I don't know, there are a lot of particulars that I don't know that would not put me in a position to tell you what the fund balance should be. So a fund balance, as you know, is subject to the institution's unique issues, right? You have contexts here where you may have a 15% fund balance, a 10% fund balance, a 8% fund. So I don't know. I couldn't really answer that question genuinely, not knowing the context of your fiscal situation right now. Like most administrators, of course, the budget is the means by which we provide the outstanding educational opportunities for our students. The budget is the means by which we pay our faculty and staff to provide quality educational programs to our students. So my philosophy is you should always have a balanced budget. Why? The college where I am, when I was hired, we had a lot of problems with accreditation. We had 9 recommendations. We were 3 follow-up reports from short course. Now, those of you who may not know what I'm talking about is ACCJC, which is the accrediting entity for the state of California for community colleges, has 4 standards, right? Those 4 standards have to be complied to. I'm just kind of giving you the big picture, but you can decouple them into sub-standards and very specific things that the institution has to demonstrate to warrant the merits of remaining as an accredited institution. The last part of the standards has to do with the fiscal well-being of the institution. It is a requirement by this accrediting entity that every institution should have a balanced budget. Preferably, that institution should not have a balanced budget that relies on unrestricted funds. You can see I'm getting excited about this one, huh? I'm getting, and that's because, as you will all share with me, hopefully, the budget is and I'll share with you a little bit my fear, is really one area where an institution cannot afford to err. There's no room to err. There's no room to err. ACCJC says you may not continuously balance your budget by using unrestricted funds. So what are unrestricted funds? Unrestricted funds are something similar to what we do in our private lives, right? Where you may borrow money from your savings account, you may borrow money from your grocery account to pay for that expense. ACCJC has said you have to learn to live within the allocated funds. What are the allocated funds? It is the funds we receive through our enrollment, FTESs. It's the apportionment revenue we receive from the state through our FTESs. So my philosophy, have a balanced budget. Make sure that as an institution, you are counting every time how well each unit is staying within its allocated means. You know the parable of the warming frog. You know, a lot of problems that sometimes institutions face have to do with the little things we do that are invisible badly. One day they emerge as problems and we can't fix them. So I hope I gave you enough about my, now I skipped little things like you have to keep working at growing your budget, rather your revenue. There are two main sources of revenue that institutions receive, as I said. You get the apportionment that is based on your FTESs. That's why our students are not only important, but it's important that they come here, they stay, they persist, they complete. That's going to be even more important with the new student-centered funding that has just kicked in that you are aware of, right? And then you have to be working at coming up with alternative sources of revenue. That's one of the things the president has to do. Work with the foundation, go out in the community there, get more money from those contributors who believe in the college's mission, and get those grants in order to offset some of your operational expenses from your general fund, and make sure you stay within your means.
Thank you. How would you reach out to and seek to understand the predominantly Hispanic, Latino majority community in the Suez Valley?
Well, you know, the college where I am is almost, apart from that, this is lush and green and beautiful. We're in a desert, and the circumstances, the demographics, our students, our populations are almost a mirror image of what, of the student body and the communities here. We're in a high desert area. We are about, if you have been to Southern California on Highway 15 going to Las Vegas, we're just about 40 miles past Riverside. So with these small communities, Apple Valley, we have Victorville, 150,000 here, 75,000. And most of our families are immigrant families. Most of our students are first-generation students. The majority of our students are Latinos. So the similarities are very stark. So I'll tell you what we have done to reach out to the families, and then to make sure we provide as much as there's much more work to do in terms of providing academic support to our students through our student equity. But here are some of the things we've done. So we bring to our college, we have family nights. This is where 4 times a year we bring as many of our families to our college. And I'll tell you why that in a way is a form of reaching out to the students. So one of the reasons we bring our families to our college is to show our families first that the college is theirs, it belongs to them. A lot of our immigrant families are not familiar with our institutions, right? They are not familiar with educational institutions, and you know, even those of you who are familiar, it's not an easy place to come to initially. It's very remote sometimes, it's very unfriendly. By the time you go through registration, you go through admissions, and you are in the classroom, you have probably gone through 20 to 50 different stages, depending on what college you are in. So that's one of the things we do. We buy food. We have people who come in who provide interpretation for a lot of our families who are non-native, they don't speak English. But one of the things we do is our student services folks and our faculty come in and they talk about the programs that we offer, and then they talk to the parents about how the parents can support their kids to come to our college. Now, I'm sure a lot of these students would agree that mom and dad play a major role in influencing them to come here. So that's one of the things we do. Another thing that we've done that we are proud of is we've formed what we call an non-governmental advisory council. This is a council that is made up of parents and families and non-profit entities that are in the community where our students and our immigrant families are, to come to the college and tell us how we can be doing a better job of attracting those students in terms of outreach and recruitment, but how we can also bring these families to our campuses so they see this as a place for their children to go. We have developed recently, we are one of the few colleges in the state of California that have received the Chancellor's Strategic Enrollment Management Plan. We are the second round of institutions. One of the things we have done as a result of this is to design our recruitment very purposefully. Here's what I mean. 85% of our students at Victor Valley, where I am now, are first generation. 85%. That means those students bring to our campus very unique and very peculiar needs. What we were doing in the past, we were just getting the kids in. We were enrolling them and they were going into class. We were not carefully looking at what challenges they bring up front. We also realized that 75% of our students, which is the same here similarly, are part-time students. All those things translate to what the institution is doing to provide academic support, to make sure that those students come in, they stay, they persist, and they complete their degrees. So those are just a few things that we have done to reach out to the families and support the students.
Thank you. What is your position on technical career education, including trade education?
Well, not only is the state emphasizing our CTE programs, it's one of our most important I think, mission to make sure that we provide a robust, career-based set of programs for those students who want to come, get a certificate or get an AA degree and get a livable wage. So I'm in full support. Not only am I in full support, but I've done a lot of things to provide support to building those programs. As you know, we have, fortunately, what is called the Strong Workforce Initiative, which was generated by the state, which is allowing colleges to do a lot of good things in terms of increasing workforce-based certificates and programs so that students can come in here and get, if they want to get a degree in automotive, a degree in respiratory therapy, a degree in nursing, they can do so. So I'm in full support.
Thank you.
I see you guys want to go and you don't want to be rude, eh? No, you can go. I know you have to go to class. You have to go to class. You're being kind. You're being kind.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Staff workloads are a growing concern, especially in light of upcoming new campus locations. How will you ensure appropriate staffing exists to support our students?
Well, it's impressive that you are doing the things you have been doing as a campus, and I had a wonderful privilege of getting a tour with Romero and Carla. They took me to a lot of places where I saw some outstanding work. And I know you just received a general obligation measure, or $167 million, something to that effect, to expand educational services for our students in those remote areas that are far away from here. I'll say that the first thing I would do is, this is my second round being a campus president. What I've done in the past, and I will repeat here because it has worked, is really spend the first 100 days doing an assessment across 4 things. The first thing that I will do if you hired me as your president is to do an assessment of our positions in all these satellite institutions. Right. So it's part of the first round of what I call performance assessment. I do it in the first 100 days. That's the only way I can clearly really be in the position where I can thoughtfully say to you, this is what this institution needs, this is what this institution should get in terms of resources. Because right now I don't know. I can give you a generalized response, which is I am 100% in support of making sure that those satellite institutions or those other campuses out there, our students have the same level of support, because that's also a requirement by our accrediting entities, is that your students, regardless of location, regardless of medium, should receive exactly the same type and the same level of support services as the students at the main campus. You have my commitment to continue that.
Thank you. What is your specific experience with fundraising, and how do you believe that would apply here at Hartnell?
Well, you know, I'm the vice president now, so I haven't been doing as much fundraising with our foundation, which tends to be the typical arm of the institution that brings funds to the institution. But I've done a lot of things that I can share with you. Just about 2.5 years ago, the foundation and the instructional office, we have teamed up to do a couple of things, and we were coming up with this program in aviation that the community had been talking about having for a long time, and we partnered across a number of places. So one place we partnered on was, who are the major donors in the area who might be interested in helping us begin this new program in our aviation? That's one thing we did as a team. Secondly, we talked about what things can we do on the instructional side of the house to incentivize people in the community, businesses in the communities that may be interested in very specific programs. We found that there are a lot of businesses that would love to contribute money and in-kind contributions to very select programs. So we went and approached ComAv, which is one of the biggest aerospace industries, and we said, could you help us by donating engines for our students in our aviation program? And they said yes. We went to General Electric. We asked them the same thing about the tubes that students have to learn that connect the engines, and they said yes. We also worked together to get $2 million from our biggest benefactor, who has helped us build a nursing program, who owns a bunch of hospitals in the high desert. So I have actually worked with the foundation to go after donations from alumni. As I said, the biggest so far is $2 million. But also, I have worked very diligently at making sure that we grow our grants, because there are 4 ways you develop money. You have the grants, you have the apportionment that we were talking about, you have in-kind contributions, and you have contributions through philanthropic gifts to your foundation, and I've done all of those. And just 6 months ago, with that philanthropic organization, Palm Ready, we got into a relationship where we partnered with them to increase the number of nurses who are graduating in the high desert and staying there to provide services. We have a problem where some of our nurses go down to LA, they go where they get higher wages. So we came up with this partnership where we are going to be educating altogether in the next 3 years 60 nurses whose educational expenses would be fully paid for by the Palm Ready Corporation, with a promise that when they graduate, they will stay in the high desert for 3 years working in those hospitals. In the process, we generated $2 million through our Contract Act to provide educational opportunities to those students.
Thank you. Please describe how you have demonstrated your commitment to students with disabilities, as well as how you have directly or indirectly supported services for students with disabilities.
Well, you know, like you, Romero walked me through in EOPS, DSPS, and all the support infrastructure that we have created here. I would say that I have personally been very supportive to our students with disabilities. I have supported, as an example, we're going to be completing in the next 6 months a one-stop center where all student services activities are going to be housed there, because we realize, as I'm sure you have here, all institutions have, that when students come to us, one of the pain points they experienced is what we call the bounce. The bounce is where you go here for admissions, you go here for registration, you go here for DSPS, you go there CalWorks, you go there for financial aid, you go. By the time some students just give up, they go. You know, of the 60% of students who express interest to come to our institutions, we only get 40% of them. And we lose them in that onboarding process. So I'm very much in support. I mentioned that we just hired, I didn't mention, we just hired 3 counselors in addition to the 2 counselors we have to provide. I don't know if you are like us here, but sometimes the communication between faculty and our disability services in terms of accommodation isn't that good. And one of the things we've done is to increase the awareness on our faculty side about complying with ADA, but most importantly, working with our disabilities office to make sure that we provide the necessary accommodation for some of those students. So those are some of the things I've done.
Thank you. How do you connect to or with adjunct faculty? And how would you engage with adjunct faculty here at Hartnell College?
You know, our part-time faculty, adjunct faculty, I don't know how they like to be addressed here. As you know, they provide the majority of our instructional programs, and a lot of them have to drive from one job to another, and they have no institution they can call a home. So some of the things I'm proud of that we've done, and I saw Romero is walking me through, is we've built and are going to be redesigning our adjunct faculty center. We never used to have that. We just had a few cubicles where they could come in and do their work, and they couldn't really have any discrete space to counsel students or to do their work. So we have doubled the space for our adjunct faculty center. We created what we call Where I Am priority rights as a way to demonstrate our appreciation to our part-time faculty. Priority rights is where once full-time faculty have been allocated their teaching load, faculty who are part-time faculty and meet a certain threshold have the next right for allocation for classes. That has been very well received by our part-time faculty, because it was a demonstration that as an institution, not only do we value what they do, but that we are willing to demonstrate through resources and doing as much as we can to make sure that they have a full-time load. We have what we call a part-time faculty celebration week, where we just highlight part-time faculty who are doing extraordinary things. In my previous position, I had a plan where we also had a professional development infrastructure for our part-time faculty to maximize their opportunities to get full-time jobs when we had full-time openings. Because you'd be surprised how many of our part-time faculty are not ready to take the opportunities of the full, because they are jumping from every place. They are not participating in the committees. The majority of them are not in the institution to understand well enough what the full-time faculty position entails in terms of the committee obligations. So that's one of the things I did that we were very happy with, which increased the rate of part-time faculty, transitioning from part-time faculty to full-time faculty by almost 40%.
Thank you. How do you ensure that shared governance structure ensures collegiality and collaboration?
Well, there are a couple of things, and as you know, sometimes participatory governance, shared governance, those two sometimes kind of, they can get mixed up, and people sometimes get those two mixed up, and we get mixed up about, you know, what's empowerment. We were just talking about this in a conference a couple of weeks ago about, you know, we were having a discussion about 10+1 and you know, about the new initiatives that in particular the Chancellor's office is coming up with, that some of the initiatives are well received, but the manner in which they have come is not well received. I'm in support of shared governance, and let me tell you what my understanding of shared governance is, and how shared governance is slightly different from, in my book, participatory governance. I understand shared governance as an arrangement where institutional communities have power and authority to block things they don't like, affirm and embrace things they don't like. So, to me, that isn't empowerment. That isn't participatory arrangement, right? So in other words, the fact that people have committees, which are the formal way by which institutions spread shared governance, right? Making sure that the individuals in different places have the opportunity to have a say in the decision-making process. Of course, we want that infrastructure to be in place, but it has been my experience, both as a faculty member and as a leader, that a lot of people, when you ask them, are you able to participate in the decision-making that the institution is coming up? Majority of people say no. Majority of people will say no. When you say, well, how come you say no? You have a shared governance committee for student success. You have a shared governance committee on diversity. You have a shared governance committee on IT. You have a shared governance, or those are the structures by which institutions demonstrate shared governance. What do you mean you don't participate? Well, I'm not in that committee. I'm not in that committee. I didn't make any of that, I didn't have any say. So what I have done that has worked well for me is, in addition to these necessary and required structures like our shared governance committees, you have to establish a campus climate where every single individual in the institution has a mechanism to have a say in the decision-making process. So how do you do that? First is you make sure that when you have an initiative or a change effort that impacts people, that you let people know what you are doing and why they need to participate. So I'll give you an example. When we did our accreditation, when I came, I said we were 3 recommendations away from sure cause, and the president who hired me left within 2 months. And I went to my dean of instruction at the time, whom you stole, ended up here, Laurie Kildoff. I went to Laurie and I said, Laurie, share with me the plan that you guys have devised to include college communities in the writing process. And she said, none. We just hired, we identified a bunch of people and we put together an accreditation report. So I vowed to do something completely different. I said, come all, come one, participate in writing this self-evaluation. The reason I did that was I wanted to make sure that every single person at the college had the opportunity to participate in that. And it was one of our best accreditation results in 30 years. It was very difficult because by saying come one, come all, you have people who may have interest, but they don't have the skill. Writing the report is a very skilled process, but people loved it because it gave them a say in how that report came out. It was truly their document. So that's what I mean by shared governance and participatory governance. Participatory therefore means empowerment and inclusion beyond the required committees that we establish that sometimes don't go back to their stakeholders and share with them what's going on. Another thing that I do to make sure that we are participatory, I meet every 2 weeks with my key holder leadership. I meet with my academic senate president and vice president. We've come up with a plan with the academic leadership, my union leadership. We have 2 faculty unions. We have AFT for part-time, CTA for full-time. And first thing I did when I came, and if you hire me, I'll do the same thing here, is I called those people and said, let's get together and figure out how we are going to work together as partners to solve common problems for this institution. That begins with relationships. We have, I mentioned, what we call a consultation venue, where on the 4th Monday, I shared with you, all stakeholders from 8:30 to 5, the cabinet hates it, but the stakeholders at the college level like it, where we walk them through our emerging plans, like we are doing guided pathways, and we are doing strong workforce, we are doing just like you here, those initiatives and the funding formula, that AB 705, this is the platform where we share with all our constituents so they're all on the same page about what we are doing. So we have added to that, I talked about these meetings we have every 2 years. They're called listening sessions. And we send to people once a year, we send a survey which we have developed to improve campus climate. There are people who don't like to talk, so they come to these listening sessions, they never say anything. So we've developed a place where they can discreetly share with the leadership the issues that are important to them. And then I do something that has nothing to do with formal shared governance. I walk. So one of the things I'm known for, I talked about that with the students. I make sure I go to every faculty's office. I have a bunch of cards. I look at their office hours. If I don't find them, I leave a note that says, Peter was here to say hi. I drop in places where people work. Some of the most informative information about what people are going through is one-on-one. I drop into people's working spaces just to say hi. I make sure I spend about 10-15 minutes. That's where I get the majority of the real challenges and pain points that people are going through. It's not in those formal contexts. So, but you have to have those formal contexts. You have to be visible. You have to visit with people. You have to be open, and you have to make sure that you put out every effort that is going to impact people's working lives. Make sure that people are part of it.
Thank you. What does guided pathways mean to you? How will you lead this initiative at Hartnell?
Well, you know, Guided Pathways is not a new initiative. It is new in California. My college, where I was in Virginia as the campus president, we had Guided Pathways. And so Guided Pathways, as you know, is not new at all. It's old. It has been around for a while. I don't know why it took so long for us here but thank God we're doing it. Guided Pathways, for me, simply means the following. You know, I talked a little bit about the pain points that students experience when they come to our institutions. You guys may be different, maybe you don't have that, but the college where I am is my 5th college. And in size, it's the smallest, 17,000 unduplicated head count. Compare that to the college where I was before in Northern Virginia, where I had 20,000 students unduplicated count, just my campus. My campus was part of 6 campuses in Virginia. At the time, the college has since declined a little bit. Northern Virginia Community College was the 2nd largest multi-campus college after Miami-Dade College, Community College, with 150,000 students between those 6 campuses. I mention that to you to impress it upon you that I think I have a very deep and wide reference point about some of these issues that I'm talking about. Students, as you know, have not only do we have this menu cafeteria that we have created in terms of our programs, which is really what the guided pathways are talking about, right? The guided pathways philosophy really says the following. If you give your students at the entry point 50 different ways by which they could pursue their degrees or certificates, they will be lost. They'll be lost. So, why don't you simplify the process by clarifying the entry path, right? Clarify the entry path so the student can come in at the entry point and see the horizon. Right? That's what guided pathways really means. If you prune out all the noise, that's what guided. Clarify the path so they can see how they can go into the system and they can see the horizon. Help them into the path. Help them stay on the path. Help them graduate. You can only do that if you are willing to rethink how you have organized your educational programs, your instruction, your support services, because if you don't rethink the structure of how you have done those things, you don't have guided pathways. Right? That's what guided pathways really is simplify the process for the student, help them enter into a program, promise them that they will have the courses they need to finish the program, give them a graduation plan so they have something they can follow, check their graduation plan in time so they can complete on time. That's guided pathways. Now, I am oversimplifying because over here, guided pathways is also linked to enrollments. We haven't talked about enrollments. We haven't talked about enrollments in lieu of the student-centered funding formula, which started last year. Right? So there is an intersection that we haven't talked, we have started talking about it at my college, which is guided pathways, strategic enrollment plan, your fiscal stability as an institution, and student success. Right? So anyhow, that's guided pathways, and as you know, Napoleon is at the gates. You can hear the bells ringing in the distance. We have to do it now. It's no longer whether or not we want to, right? The Chancellor's Office, through AB 705, restructuring the funding formula, and the goals that they've come up with that now are tied to, now the funding is based on 3 things. It's going to be based on formula-based FTESs. They're no longer giving you FTESs for growth. That's done. Right? The second part has to do with your student economic situation. It's called grant-based funding. That's the second part, which means they're going to give 20% across the state 2 institutions based on the economic conditions of their students. The third one is student success, which has 7 points that are very variegated, which are supposed to incentivize institutions to concentrate on student completions.
Can you come up with it?
Mm.
I didn't catch up with that.
Yeah, I'm done, sir. Yes, sir, I am.
That concludes our forum, and thank you very much for attending and joining me in offering Peter a round of applause.
Thank you.